and you detail everything in it, what's the one thing your world can't do? Surprise you. Because everything there you've put there.
Right.
Suddenly, I was reading a story in the realms. The realms had come to life, and it was something I hadn't come across before. So the realms was alive. Now, it wasn't until Elaine Cunningham's Elf Shadow that I read a novel that I thought somebody was reading my mind. You
Yeah.
know, this is the realm. This is But I was seeing a corner of the realms, and I didn't care if things were different because Jeff Grubb had already warned me, Ed, here's the white paper I wrote. You realize what we're going to do. It's a kitchen sink world. We've got these desert of desolation modules with Egyptian pyramids, and we're going to dump them here. And we're going to have Arabian adventures, which became El Khadim. We're going to have jungle adventures, which became Malatra. We're going to have polar adventures, and we're going to have Oriental adventures, which
Yeah.
became, wait for it, Oriental
Oriental
adventures.
Adventures.
So I already knew stuff was going to be put in. So the first thing I got was, can we steal the name of your like broadsheet, your newspaper, Neverwinter Nights, because we need it for an outside license? And I said, sure, I don't mind. Be nice to have a game out there called Neverwinter Nights. That's cool. He goes, and this thing, Spellfire. Jim likes that name. He's going to steal it for a card game, but we're also going to use it in your novel. He says, and do you mind if we sync your moonshays? Doug Niles is going to do another moonshays in their place. And I said, fine, because it didn't matter. Because as you mentioned earlier, Doug, it was an island area that didn't have much to do with the mainland. So if you
Yeah.
change something, doesn't bother me in the slightest. And what really bothered me about the published realms is when something deviated from the stomping grounds of the home campaign. So we'd been there and my characters had seen it and now it was changing
Yeah.
like markedly. That would bother me. But if it was part they hadn't visited, so it was a name on a map and my ton of notes, it didn't matter if it changed because nobody'd seen those notes except
And
Jeff Grubb.
if I could interject,
Yeah, yeah, please.
one of the
I've
beauties
talked.
of the realms is there were so many places like that that were just all over that that were it's why somebody was saying there's like 300 novels of the
Almost
forgotten
300. Yeah.
stuff.
Yep.
It you had so many different places that people could work with, and like somebody mentioned in our seminar you and I were both in Madison last weekend
Mm-hmm.
that um what's the big the city that's the crossroads of the whole
Waterdeep.
Waterdeep. Yeah, right. That was important because people had to be consistent when they write about that because everybody goes there. And it was a magnificent opportunity to write and to have adventures in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I have a question for you, Doug.
Okay.
Oh,
The one question that has always intrigued me about the Moonshays. You come out with the first trilogy. I read it, I enjoy it, and then Mary and Jim are talking to me on one of my annual visits and say, "Oh yeah, we're moving those in time. We're shifting the dates they occurred." Why? What was that about?
I was not part of that that decision. I didn't even honestly I never had a sense that the Moonshay adventures were connected to a specific spot in time for the rest of the Forgotten Realms, but obviously they were. But I don't know what that was about. Maybe
Okay.
continuity. People, especially editors, are very oriented towards maintaining continuity, and the writers, I think, not so much.
Yeah, yeah. I think there would be a lot less drunk in the world if editors didn't worry about continuity.
Yeah, you're right. Yes.
Okay, cool. Because that was the one thing I always wondered because the novels came out, they were well received, they sold, they were there for a couple of years. I got the QT from Jim. Oh, Doug's doing another trilogy. Okay, cool.
Which is a
Also in the
sequel. Yeah.
yeah, And then they say, "Oh, and we're moving the dates to the original." It's what?
Honestly, Ed, they never told me that.
Ah.
I don't think I had any dates as far as I can recall. I didn't have any dates in those books that were like Forgotten Realms dates.
And
Maybe I'm
interestingly, when I was writing my early novels in the realms, I would
yeah.
always avoid giving specific dates.
Yeah.
I might say that this day was colder than the last day or something like that, but I was dancing around dating. And by the third or fourth year, I was getting these directives from Jim Lauder. No. You have to pin down the date right at the beginning of the novel. Say something like, "It was a hot day in Flame Rule, early Flame Rule," or something like that. Make darn sure the thing is pinned down. And
Wow.
I realized, oh, okay. Because the one thing, my role for the writing is I was not on staff, but I was almost on staff. So they could say, "Ed, we need your novel to do these service things. Introduce this other product, explain chamber pots, settle whether dwarven women have beards." They'd give me a shopping list of things to put in my novel because they know I would somehow work them in. And one of them was, "Oh yeah, you have to date everything." Just as Jim Ward would take me aside and say, "Mr. Greenwood, your beautifully hand-drawn maps are truly a joy to behold. Put some GD scales on them. I don't want to see another map without a map scale." And I'd say,
I could hear him saying that.
Yeah, and GD was not the word he used, but
well,
yeah,
I mean, I had my timeline continuity in the Moonshade was the second trilogy was about the children of the couple that got married in the first trilogy, so that kind of puts it after the first one. That's about as specific as I got.
Yes, yeah. I had farming grandparents and aunts raise me, so I got told about how babies happen very early on. So yeah, I had mastered that. Didn't get any practice until later, but understood in theory.
I don't think I ever said anywhere that like this book happened 20 years after that book. But the fact that the baby was born in one book and is an adult in the next book kind of is a hint.
It helps you.
Yeah. Subtle. Yeah, very subtle.
We still face that problem today with the current adventures. People are like, "What year is this?" I'm like, "I don't know." 1502? Yeah, sure.
1499? I don't know.
And
I like, by the way, Eric, that in your sample comic strips that you still have a Kendrick line of kings in the Moonshades. That seems pretty cool to me, I must say.
Thank you. We couldn't have Moonshades without a Kendrick.
No, there has to be a Kendrick on the throne. Come on.
Yeah. It might have a different name. Like half of the Moonshades is related to Kendrick somehow.
Well, I'm a Kendrick, and my wife is too.
My son's a Kendrick.
Yeah, you see, that's the thing. They would try and borrow on the strength of the name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Currently, we have them where they're holding on by a thread.
Okay, that's good.
The Jarls of the Northlanders are all about to flip the table and leave.
Yeah. Oh, I got that sense from the reply to the wedding invite. That was pretty
yes,
brilliantly written. I fed it to I used it to do some unspeakable wiping, and then fed it to my pigs, and then burned awful. Yeah, that was really, really well stated.
Tell us how you really feel.
Right.
It's setting up events for one of our adventures, which is going to be leading into a plot line because we took Ed's suggestion to heart, which is whenever you resolve one thing, you introduce 3 new problems.
Yeah.
And this is one of the 3 new problems of the Jarls are not terribly fond of being underneath of the Kendrick thumb.
Sure.
They'll tolerate it when they like the Kendrick, but they don't particularly like this Kendrick.
That's a great setup. I've never heard that rule of 3 before, but I love it. That's a really, when you solve a problem, introduce 3 more problems. I like
Yeah.
that.
Jeff's rule was don't blow up the moon.
Yeah, right.
And when he said that to me, he said, "Okay, I get to contribute a rule too because it's my world." And it was the rule of 3, and the rule of 3 was lazy writers will tie off a loose end, one of the
Right.
ones in the old gray box or wherever. They'll tell a story that burns up and uses some characters. So if you're going to do that, eventually you will have solved all the mysteries of the world, laid bare everything, and the world will seem that you've used it up or lifeless. So to avoid that, it was, okay, for everything you tie off, everything you answer, everything you resolve, I want 3 new things. So the world seems alive. That's all. And it works.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
We always have adventures to write.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you can wrap things up from our previous arcs, things were tidy. There's little loose ends that are starting to develop into whole new contentions. Like they mentioned the Storm Maiden in that comic. And we were... she's a little bit unformed yet because we wanted to leave that open for future writers, but her short little note is chosen of Umberley.
Okay.
And she does not like how the Northlanders have gotten all wussified and are now trying to be a part of society when they should be reaving and taking what they want. To which some of the folk would respond, "Have you seen the Northlanders trade? That's pretty much reaving."
Yeah.
Because they show up and push you around and bully you until you trade things with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one thing I don't like in game design is fate, destiny, one ring to rule them all, because what it means is your heroes aren't heroes. They're just pawns following a script.
Right.
And I also... we had a lady who lived and died some years ago, Anna Russell, and she was an opera singer, and she used to do satirical albums of opera. And one of them was her satire of The Ring. And, of course, The Ring is a cycle. So after you've sat through 16 bloody hours of this thing, what do you hear? The Rhine Maidens, da, 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 and it's all circled around. And of course, that's fatal. And if we came perilously close to it, and I had to do some hard arguing behind closed doors in the summit about the second sundering when we did the sundering, because I didn't want it to seem like the cycle comes around again and there's nothing you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Because it means all of your heroism, everything you strove to do, everything that was written in a novel, all those achievements are pointless because the thing cycles. So that's the other deadly don't go there. And the wonderful thing and Darkwalker set the tone for this, it's normal people. I mean, they're normal to themselves, even if they were born the royal lineage.
Mm-hmm.
They're just people, and they try and do their best, and they achieve things, and it changes the world, their own little corner of the world. They achieve things of lasting. They have left their stamp on the world, which I think is critical.
So the whole rule of don't blow up the world kind of went to the side with Troy Denning and the Sundering and.
Well, here's the thing.
It wasn't the moon.
It wasn't the moon. Yeah, it wasn't the moon.
It wasn't the moon. Right.
Yeah,
Fair play.
Yeah. He honored the letter of the law while jumping up and down on its spirit. and of course, the problem that arose because too many of the senior designers at TSR were avid comics readers. And
it was an epidemic.
Yeah. And you involve the gods and a fantasy world, and everybody goes, Thor! Every 50 issues of Thor, we have Ragnarok. Every 50 issues.
Yeah.
Regular as clockwork. And of course, when you're changing the game and you're doing, they borrow the God's War thing from my Dragon article, the Avatar Time of Troubles, and you say, yeah, we'll just do that, instead of quietly changing things or saying, it's always been this way, you just didn't notice. We've never had assassins. You just didn't notice that.
You didn't notice that, yeah.
Which is not a good way of changing it either. We'll sell a huge product, a series. You have to buy it, so you have a ringside seat. You are there as the heavens part, or the Red Sea parts, or the devastation, the invoke. Yeah, I mean, and of course that was the thing. They already had fingers pointing at them, because when Greyhawk was the thing, Gary would talk about the invoked devastation, which was a past historical event off stage. Errol Otis drew one little drawing, black and white line drawing of it, and they said what it did to lay this empire low, this magical empire, and that was all that was said about it. And everybody said, what was it like? What happened when you were there? And okay, it's like, yeah, so they already had that pointing at them. Let's have it right there when it happens, which is why we got the Avatar trilogy, the Avatar series of modules, which I had to write before the books in the trilogy were written. So poor Jim Lauder had to rewrite them 3 or 4 times from end to end as the plots of the novels changed, and as TSR learned the hard way how not to tell a major event.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I have to admit, I really enjoyed the Avatar trilogy.
Oh, sure.
The writing was impeccable. I mean, Jim Lauder, he took it over, did he, about halfway through the second book?
Yep.
So him and Scott Simpson, was it Scott Simpson?
Scott Cianson, who
yeah,
is no longer with us, and
right.
Troy Denning did the third book, and then
so well done.
Jim had to go lightly over all of them to make them seem to the reader to sort of have the same voice.
And they did, because I enjoyed them. I didn't enjoy the fact of what it changed, but I enjoyed reading what was happening to the gods.
Yes,
it was a good read. I really enjoyed. I mean, to me, that's one of the first set that I wrote. I read Doug's first, then I read a couple of Bob's, and then I read the Avatar trilogy, and that's what hooked me into the realms. I think at that point, because I could see it. The writing was so well done. I could see it in my mind, and that's what makes a good book for me. That's why your books are so good, is because I can see the scene. It's painted for me.
There is two drawbacks to that trilogy. You're trying to cover too much, and you don't have enough word count.
Right.
So it's sort of like you get the it's like when you're visiting the Louvre and you get the coach tour.
Yeah,
and you're literally running through the Louvre. Oh, that's the so and so. That's the so and so. Okay, we got to get back on the bus. And you're going, hey,
wait.
I didn't have time to stop and enjoy what I wanted to. And so there's that problem. And the other problem is, every time you write about the gods, you strip away some of their awe and wonder, because you're seeing them. Now, the gods of the Forgotten Realms, and this holds true in the Moonshays, as well as they are like the Greek and Roman gods. They are super humans, or super elves, or super dwarves. They are fallible mortals, except they're not mortal anymore. They just have their lusts or problems or predilections, whatever they are.
They're characters.
Yeah,
right.
But they are super powerful characters.
Right.
But they are not beyond our understanding. They're like big, overblown babies or bullies or whatever. Everything like Zeus sleeping with everything that he could get his hands on within reach is the reason for so many events in history. But it makes they are already tending towards stuff we can understand, because they're your 7 deadly sins or your virtues writ large, as opposed to, it's a twinkling light that whispers in our ear and I don't understand it. So you're stripping away the awe and wonder. And of course, if you respect that and try to keep as much awe and wonder, you tell us less about the deity. And I'm specifically talking about fiction now, not game stuff.
Right.
But if you give us scenes, where behind the scenes where, the god of thunder is using the chamber pot, and bitching to a goddess next door, you're stripping away the awe and wonder.
Well, as they say, no one wants to see how the sausage is made.
Well, but you see, gamers do.
Well, that's
Gamers
true.
will argue about everything.
We
How
will.
does the casing is made? How quickly does the machine spit it out? Or are you doing it by hand on the kitchen table? Are you sewing up the sausages? Gamers
Is it
wanna-
electric or is it a crank?
Yeah, because some gamer is going to want to exploit that in play.
Right.
On that note, guys, excuse me, I'm going to have to step away for about 2 minutes. I'll be right back.
Okay, no,
Okay.
go ahead.
Too much talk of casing.
Yes, casing,
Casing.
casing and sausages. Yes.
We actually still have. We use that what you just described, Ed, to our
Yeah.
advantage in the moon chase because we had Talos, or at least a avatar of Talos, show up.
Mhm.
Because, which is great because it personified him and made him smaller.
Yes.
Whenever he shows up as an avatar, he's no longer just a force of destruction. He's that form of destruction right there that can now be fought, and it made him smaller. At the same time, we had the Earth Mother never took form. She remained nebulous and unknown, and so she remained bigger in the background into the views of a lot of the players. So we're using gamer instincts against them in order
Got
for
it.
the
That makes-
benefit
that
of the
makes sense.
storytelling.
That makes
Yeah.
sense for the Earth Mother because she's everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know, I'm fascinated every time we have these discussions, Eric, and you talk about the Hair Lord. I want to see him.
Yeah.
Is he the hair that we see at the beginning of Alice in Wonderland? I'm late. I'm going to be late. You know.
I thought he was the original creature from the animation at the beginning of Watership Down.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So for those who are not caught up on this one, Ed and I are in a Greyhawk game with Jay, Lord Gazumba, and I'm playing a halfling I made up a mortal enemy for my halfling sheriff, who is the Hair Lord, which is like the Cat Lord in Greyhawk. This
Yeah.
is the Bunny Lord, boss of all bunnies. And because I'm a
Bunny
halfling
Lord.
farmer, obviously my mortal enemy is going to be a rabbit.
Oh geez.
And so it's going to
Eric,
have Peter Rabbit homages all over
the
it.
moment you say that, I'm picturing fishnets, cottontail, a little tray of drinks.
Little hat.
20 years, yeah.
Well, we are at Gary Con. We are at the old Playboy Mansion.
The old Playboy
That's
Mansion.
right.
Yeah.
And once I found that out, I was like, that
Oh.
explains so much about this place.
Okay. Eric, they have remodeled because I have it on very good authority that 3 carpets ago, the wall-to-wall broadloom had little tiny Playboy bunny heads, the logo, as a repeated pattern about a foot apart. And if you stare down at the carpet, as I did, much to my peril, because you bend over at Gary Con, you're liable to have someone run into your backside and catapult you forward because everybody's crowded into those. There were no bunnies, and so I asked much, and the poor offended manager said, "Oh, the carpets were torn up by the previous owner, and then the owner before that." And only the owner before that was Mr. Hefner. Oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
So what
Yeah,
you're
because
saying
you
is,
saw that at the very beginning, Ed. Remember when you were a little kid with your dad?
oh no, I didn't. No. My dad took me to Gen Con 8.
I
the
thought
one
that was in the
previous.
mansion too.
No, it was in the mansion in Chicago.
Okay.
A mansard roof 4-story house that's been demolished years ago because there's skyscrapers there. and it was so long ago you could park right outside your destination in Chicago. Try that. And there was a wooden telephone pole, and somebody had stapled an 8.5 by 11, sheet of paper advertising Gen Con. So after we visited the mansion, which was because of my father and was not for carnal purposes or drinking, it was because he was a spy. Anyway,
He was there to read the articles.
Yes, he was there. Yes, he was. No,
yeah,
he was.
You see that? Yeah, I've worked in public libraries all my life, and in the old days, not anymore, in the city of Toronto, the library, of course, had a subscription to Playboy. And this was considered that a good thing, because then all the fine, God-fearing men who didn't want to have a subscription to Playboy and offend, not look bad to the neighbors and offend their wives, could just come to the library and read the articles. And I would always hand over the things, and the ladies would make all the twittery noises, and the librarians would say, oh, I really dislike giving that magazine out. But you seem to have no problem, Ed. And I'd look at them and say, I'm the sort of man who reads Playboy for the centerfolds and the pictures.
I didn't even know they had articles till later.
Actually, I was just joking, because Playboy and Penthouse paid 15 cents a word, which was, like
a lot.
10 cents more than anybody else was paying.
I was going to say 4 or 5 cents was the going rate.
So if you want to read good science fiction and fantasy by the likes of Arthur C. Clarke, Robert Heinlein, Bob Bloch, Roger Zelazny, George R.R. Martin, look in the pages of Playboy, because it was the top market until Alice Turner was gently ushered out the door by a new management team. The best fiction going was published there.
Huh.
It's so really you should really read it for the articles. But leaving that aside, I'm dragging us back to the Moonshade.
Dragging us back to the realms. Okay, Curry, we got some questions, Curry.
Go there by way of a fest hall.